Hey everybody, I'm Laura Beth and I'm here with the LB, the Lover of Books author chat. I want to introduce this fantastic New York Times bestselling novelist. Julie Clark is the author of The Last Flight and has earned starred reviews from Kirkus, Publishers Weekly, Library Journal, and New York Times has called it thoroughly absorbing. So if you haven't read that one, that's your next read. It's been named an Indie Next Pick, Libraries Reads Pick, Best Book of 2020 by Amazon Editors and Apple Books. Her debut, though, The Ones We Choose, was published in 2018 and has been optioned for television by Lionsgate. You know I'm going to be asking that later. All right, now let's get on to The Lies I Tell. This was a Book of the Month choice. You may have that version. It's also an Amazon Best Book of the Year. So big awards here. She lives in Los Angeles with her 2 sons and her golden doodle with poor impulse control. And I've been told it's a he or she?
Yeah, it's a he.
A he has been put aside because he might want to interrupt this he likes to chat too. So
He does.
Laura Dave, who you may know, that wrote The Last Thing He Told Me. It's now going to be a series on Apple Plus. She says Julie Clark.
Very soon.
Yeah, very soon. Julie Clark has done again, taking you straight into the collision course of 2 dynamic, complicated women. So we're all excited to see that on Apple TV, and we're really excited to talk to Julie tonight. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me. I'm so excited to be here.
Well, how about we go ahead and just dive right in? I said that this was going to be a fire fast chat because it's just so exciting. I want to know how this book came to be. Like, what was the initial thought? Was it a character? Was it a plot? What was it that just started it?
I was sitting at my son's piano lesson, which was an hour long. This was pre-pandemic when, we did things like that more regularly. And I was listening to this podcast called Who the Hell is Hamish, which is like this Australian production about this guy in Australia named Hamish, and he gets these women to fall in love with him, and he steals all their money and maybe all their family's money as well, and then he disappears on to the next con. And I remember listening to it, and it was interesting and intriguing in all the different ways that he decided that he wanted to, the ways that he kind of wove himself into people's lives. But I just remember thinking, I think a woman would be better at this, right? I think women are, they know how to make themselves vulnerable to get other people to open up. They are not threatening in any way. When a new woman approaches you, you're not thinking what do you want from me? And so I thought it would be really interesting to write a story of a female con artist. And I didn't really want to write a sociopath, which is what con artists really are. And so I wanted to then I started thinking about what kind of a person is she and what's her backstory? And I'm sure she didn't as a little girl dream of growing up to be a con artist. So, how did she come to fall into that? And how does she use her ability to trick people over large sums of money to benefit herself or to benefit other people? And, Meg kind of grew from there.
So I want to pick your brain a little bit. It sounds like Meg first. Do you totally develop her as a character and then move on, or do you start to think immediately, oh, who's going to be her counterpart, who's going to be victims? How do you keep it in your head?
I think with this book, Kat came pretty quickly thereafter, because what fun is a con artist if there isn't somebody coming after them, So I needed to create a character that would be her antagonist, basically,
So you start to think of very specific traits that each of them will need, I assume, to complement each other. Do you have a think board? Do you have a notepad? What do you do to develop them?
I journal a lot of stuff out. So I have notebook after notebook after notebook just on thinking about character and where they come from and what their backstory is. And I do a lot of writing by hand. So that sort of helps me develop who these people are and why we should care about them and what matters to them and what their trauma is. And
Julie, we're losing you.
Sort of help again, but it helps me Okay, hold on. Let me double check I want to know I'm on the right internet. Okay, can you hear me?
Yeah, you're back. You just froze. Was
Okay.
everybody else seeing their freeze? Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, okay. Um, so I generally work in a notebook and I don't necessarily go back and revisit what I've written, but it does help me sort of get to know them and to be a little bit more in their head as a person.
I'm gonna say that's a lot, a little Meg-like there with the notebooks.
Mhm. Mhm.
Um,
Mhm.
do you see yourself? I mean, obviously, I'm not implying you're a con artist or anything like that, but do you put bits of yourself or people that you know into write them into these characters' habits?
I don't put people I know into these characters, but I do put a lot of myself into them. So, for example, if something's happening, I start thinking, like, well, what would I do in this situation? And with Meg, I mean, I'm a very careful, cautious person who's afraid to get caught jaywalking, let alone stealing people's money. So, I would often with Meg think, well, what would I do in this situation? And then I would have her do the complete opposite, which was really fun.
And then how would you apply it to Kat then? Because she's obviously much more
She's
conscious.
more like me.
Okay,
So it would be more like, what would I do? And then have Kat do that.
awesome.
Yeah.
Um, how were you able to get, and I mean, besides just saying what's the opposite of what I would do, are there other ways that you can get inside the head of a con woman to really make this feel as authentic as it does?
I did a lot of research into con artists in general, and apparently there are a lot of different kinds of con artists. You know, there's the palm readers, the fortune tellers. Then there's sort of like the people like Meg that I find very interesting, which are more long conners, right? Like they really go in and take on a persona and pretend to be somebody that they're not for an extended period of time, which I think is incredibly hard. But I actually think it would be it was really fun to write. So, kind of figuring out her cons and figuring out what she wants and who she's after was all just really a lot of fun for me to noodle through.
It really brought to mind the show Mindhunter. Have you, I mean, I know that's serial
Hmm.
killers, but it had that same sort of feel of being inside her head and trying to figure out her purpose, what she's looking for. It very much felt like it could be on in a series. And so I'm going to go ahead and
Yes.
dive in. Like, you tell me, is there any hope that this might make it to the screen?
Yeah, there is. Yeah, there is.
Okay.
So,
No
we're
more
working on it.
details? No more
No,
details? Okay.
no.
What about with your other projects? Are there, I might as well go ahead and follow up with those.
Yeah,
Any more?
yeah, there are. Yeah. So, uh, all of my books, my first book, which was Option to Lionsgate, the way that options work, I don't know if you know, but what that basically means is that a studio or a producer options your book for the right to produce it if they want. So
Okay.
they're basically like renting the rights and they'll pay you a sum of money and they'll basically, it's not available and it's theirs to develop or not develop as they choose. And so what can happen is that a book can get optioned and it can sit on the shelf for quite a long time where nothing is really happening. And then the option expires and then you're free to shop it around again to other people who might be interested in it. So my first book, which was Option to Lionsgate, I think that option has expired at this time. I'm not entirely sure. But my other two books are under option with different places. So we're working hard toward that.
Do you see them more as movies, series? Like, is there any, do you have any say in that, or you just sort of
I
wait?
do. I do. It's part of sort of the discussions that I have with people who are interested in optioning it. And they ask me, like, how do I see it? What do I envision? But at the end of the day, it's theirs to do with what they want. So um, I can say I'd prefer it to be a series or I'd prefer it to be a feature film, and they'll say, "Oh, that's lovely." And things happen in the industry that make it so that that's not always going to be what it's going to end up being. But again, once they option it, once they purchase it, once they produce it, like it's theirs. They can do it how they want to. So I see The Last Flight as more of a feature film, and The Lies I Tell is definitely more of a series vibe.
I agree. Allison's as excited as I am. And Kayla would like to know, do you get to be involved in the process of casting? Or if they want to change things to your book?
I'm not involved in casting at all. That's totally on their end, which is good because I know like 3 people. I know, Reese Witherspoon, Julia Roberts, and Jennifer Garner. Like those are the people that I know. So they have a
All
little
three
more,
great though. Let's
all
just
3
say.
great, right? Like I would love to have them all be in my projects, but those are the stars that like I know of and could like recognize them on the street. Everybody else, I don't know. So, but I don't get a say in who plays what part. I do get an option to participate in executive producing it, so that is fun. And if they want to change the book, that's again, it's up to them. They've optioned it, they've paid for it. Like they often will run things by me and say, what do you think this? And we're thinking of doing that. But if I don't like it, they're like, nope, that's the direction you go in, then that's the direction they go in. So yeah.
Now, I once heard Emily St. John Mandel say, at times when she has a book, she just wants to hand it over and get the check and not have, a ton to do.
Yeah.
And then other
Yeah.
times it's like, no, I want to be involved in the script writing. Do you have any preference there for you?
I am more of the give me the check and hand over the project and let them do with it what they want.
Yeah.
It's not my industry. I don't know how to write a screenplay. I don't know how to adapt a book. I could learn, but I much prefer to just write books. So
Yep.
that's how I'd like to spend my time.
And you do it so well. So we are appreciating that you are doing that. When Meg starts describing how to be a con, she says, learn everything you could about him, what he believed in, what repulsed him, what he cared about above all else, so I could mirror that back to him. I started thinking about that. That's not too far off what we do in everyday society for
Mhm.
lots of things, interviews,
Mhm.
getting in inner circles,
Mhm.
friendship. So like how do you take it to the next level to make, because it seems so mundane, but she's
Yeah. I think you take it to the next level when you start taking their money.
yeah.
You
When you
know?
have malintent, right?
Right, right. Yeah. Yeah. When you start lying to them and, convincing them to buy you a car
Yeah.
or convincing them to buy you a computer. Or, I think there are a lot of like low grade con artists in the world that we sort of kind of shrug our shoulders and say, like, well, they're just a user or they're, gold digger, all of those terms. But I do think that that is a form of conning as well.
Yeah, I agree. Um, how how did you keep, and we talked about this beforehand. Everybody here has read it. We've talked about this. So if you're expecting non-spoilers, sorry, it happens in these chats. And I know everybody's
Yeah.
so let's just go ahead and dive in. How were you able to keep our perception of Meg so iffy at the beginning, right? Like we have to believe that we're not quite sure what her true motives are and to be able to keep us along. Do you know what I mean? Like how do you do
Yeah.
it as an author?
It's hard. It's really, really hard. I think it really starts with overwriting her and making it so explicitly clear on the page and then taking stuff out and then giving it to readers and being like, now how do you feel about her? And then they'll read and say, like, I still totally trust her. And okay, we're taking more out. So that was a lot of just taking stuff out.
Who are your readers? Who do you trust with your material?
Other authors, a lot of other authors. I could say Amy Malloy had her hands on this one. Laura Dave had her hands on this one. Liz Kay had her hands all over this one. So a lot of just author friends. Amy Mason Doan. Oh gosh, who else? Forgetting Kim Marie Martin. So, I have a lot of author friends who are happy to um, pitch in, and I do the same for them.
Well, that's sort of one of the big themes of this book is, when you have two women, or I'll say two plus women working on something, a lot of
Mhm.
great can come of it. How do these circles work? Is it something that you just like email back? Do y'all get together? Is it a Zoom? Like how we'd like to know about your inner circle.
It's sort of, these are my colleagues, so we support each other and we move in the same circles. Some of us have the same agents, some of us are at the same agencies, some of us are at the same publisher. And so we become friends, you know, just like you have an office with your office friends, like these are my office friends, you know, and so we don't have an office necessarily to go to, but we do communicate on social media and we do communicate via text. And when we're in town, we visit each other and hang out. And you know, it's always fun. And you know, like with anybody, when you work in the same field, you talk about the great things and the bad things and the things that go wrong. And you know, it's nice to sort of have people to complain to, like any job.
What a cool group of friends to have. And I see
Yeah.
some people volunteering as tribute to pre-read your text. Of course.
Good to know. Thank you.
Lauren has a great question because you talked about, you know, having to take stuff out of the novel. So what's a scene that you loved, but it didn't work and it ended up on the cutting room floor? Did you have anything like that?
I do. I mean, there was one scene where Meg is getting ready to go to Pennsylvania and she has found Renata online and she has figured out what she wants to do to Philip Montgomery. And I wrote her in Colorado, interning for an interior decorator and learning the job and learning the lingo and getting all of her materials in place, fabric books and things that she's going to need to really sell herself on the job. I had to take a lot of that out, and that was hard because it was just really sharp and clever, and you know the things that you love about your writing. And my editor was like, "This section is too long," and so we need to hit the ground running right when she arrives. No, none of this prep work. So I had to take that out, but I loved it.
So you did make a decision though, when like, because you have current day and then you do jump back in time for high school scenes, for the Pennsylvania scenes, you know, things like that. How do you make that decision of what's going to make the book flow best and why you thought it would work for this novel?
I after the last flight, I said I was never going to do a dual POV, dual timeline again, and then I ended up doing the exact same thing for this book. So, famous last words, but it's to me, it's more effective sometimes in telling a story if you can actually, instead of somebody just telling you what happens, it's more fun, I think, for the reader to actually be there and witness it and live it alongside the narrator instead of having the narrator just tell you about it. And so going back and forth in time is a really easy way, well, not easy, but it is a way to do that very effectively and to keep the readers engaged. And if you can weave those timelines together in the past and the present, where you're not really sure how the past is informing the present as you're reading, that keeps the reader hooked in, engaged, and wanting to keep turning the pages, which is always the goal.
Well, I can see why you said, well, it's not easy. So, but I want to know exactly why you initially said, I'm not ever doing two timelines again. Like,
It's hard. It's hard. You have to make sure each story arc has its own arc. You have to make sure each timeline matches first timeline match up with the beats of the second timeline. There's a lot of taking it apart and putting it back together again in different order, and a lot of note cards on the ground where you're standing over them and your neck is getting sore because you're moving things, literally physically moving things around. So it's hard. It's nice to just write a book that starts on one day and ends, 6 weeks later.
well,
But it doesn't seem to work out for me that well.
this book seemed to kind of have a countdown too, right? So many days till the election. So
Yes.
was that tricky to make sure you're maneuvering and keeping pace, and like how do you fit that in?
Yeah, I literally use a calendar. I print out one of those calendars off of whatever your Apple calendar or whatever, and I just print a blank one, and I just start penciling in chapters and what days these happen on, and making sure that, if the book starts in January or June of this year and we're already in August, like that, it feels like a reasonable amount of time has passed where, your reader is not like, wait, how do we get to August? Like, I don't, so that's also part of the revision process as well. And it's not my favorite part. I tend to, when I draft, highlight and tag timeline for things that I know I'm going to have to anchor a timeline there.
Well, as a reader, I'd like to request when you're doing this next, and you may say I'm never doing this again, but when you do it again and it's all over, just take a blurred shot. We don't need to see the writing or your spoilers, but I would just love to see that set up at some point because it's such a
Okay.
visual, like just,
Yeah.
that's so cool.
Yeah.
Someone asked, so Jackie asked, did COVID quarantine impact your timeline of getting this book out at all, or did it change your writing process? Like, how did it affect it?
It didn't really. I get up very early in the morning to write, and so I just kept doing that. I just kept getting up and writing in the morning because that's when I feel freshest to create. Um, I did have a problem with like my sense of time. So we sold the book to my publisher, I want to say in like October of 2020. And I had just sold it off of a synopsis. Not a word of it had been written yet. Just my idea. Here's the structure. Here are the characters. This is what I'm imagining it, comping it, all of that. And she said, we love it. We'll buy it. And do you think you could have it for us by June of 2021? And I was like, June of 2021? That's like forever from now. That's like a year and a half from now. I don't know, something about being in COVID and quarantine really did like make time kind of fold over on itself to where I thought June of 2021, like, yeah, that's fine. I can do that. That's forever, And a friend of mine said, that's 9 months from now. And I thought, oh my God. And so that was not, I don't recommend that.
How long did it take you? Was it 9 months?
And I hit that deadline. I hit that deadline. I had to work real hard. Yeah, but for some reason that book just came to me fully formed. Like I could not do that now with the book that I'm working on right now, which is taking a lot longer to sort of figure out what I want it to be. I knew right away what I wanted this book to be. I knew right away who I wanted Meg to be, and that helped a lot.
Well, kudos to you for making that deadline, especially during COVID, because I know I agree with the sense of time. It was totally off. There was a neat perspective with this book with Meg. Who is her audience? Because she did a quote when she was talking. Corey describes himself as a conscious optimist, and Meg states, "Don't feel bad. I had to Google it too." She's obviously speaking. I'm like, is she speaking to me? And
Yeah.
then again, spoiler alert, I'm like, is this her writing in her notebook diaries, like how you would write to someone? Like what's going on there?
I don't know. I kind of liked that line and nobody flagged it as being too like pulling the reader out. So I left it. I
I thought,
liked it. I don't know. I mean, I didn't have a purpose. I wasn't thinking anything beyond like, I mean, I think I probably was more talking to the reader than anyone else.
yeah. I mean, I
Yeah.
kind of was like, wait, like, did I just do that? Like it was great, an attention getter. And I loved that pull out moment. And I thought, where is she going with this? Like, is this a clue?
Mhm.
And then when the notebooks dropped under
Mhm.
the diaries, I thought, this could be it. Like Kat may find this line somewhere.
Maybe, with that. That sounds smarter. Yeah, that sounds smarter. We'll do that. We'll do that one instead.
Um, all right. So we kind of already talked about this, the strong theme of women supporting women. Why was that important for you to, have this as a central line throughout?
I feel like the world that we live in right now, I have an obligation to portray women on the page as the smart, savvy, strong people that I know them to be. I don't like writing weak, crazy, unstable women. I feel like that's just not what I want to put out into the world, and that's certainly not the women that I know and care about. And so that's always a goal of mine, right? Like I write women who are in a lot of trouble and have made bad choices, like we all make bad choices, but they're not victims. They're not. I mean, I made a point of making sure that Meg did not see herself as a victim. Kat did not see herself as a victim. Like that is not that is not who I wanted them to be. They were both. I mean, I think Kat less so. I mean, she was pretty angry about what Nate did to her, and she's pretty angry about what she believes Meg did to her. but she's got an action plan. She's not sitting in a corner falling apart. You know, she's got an action plan and she's gonna execute it.
And what her boyfriend did to her. I mean,
Yeah, that too. Yeah.
that was pretty brutal in itself. Um,
Yeah.
can you talk a little bit about, there was a little brief moment when the English teacher brings in the novelist to talk about the book. Is that you, first of all? Are you that novelist?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I
It's
always know the ending of my books. Always, always, always. Yeah.
okay. I love it. And then I also want to know about the unreliable narrator comment, because that was another little blurb into novel writing. And I'd like for you just to talk about that. Like, are there unreliable narrators or not?
What's my line again in the book? I can't remember.
Hold on, I quoted it somewhere. I have so many notes, I'll find it in a minute.
Oh, I think it's something about, it's in the letter to Kat where there is no such thing as a reliable narrator. Yeah. I
Yes.
mean, I think that's necessarily true, you know. We're none of us are reliable narrators, really, right? We tell our side of the story and we have a tendency to shade ourselves as the hero or the victim or whatever benefits us, right? There's nobody that truly can unobjectively, you know, say say the truth. So, I mean, I think that that's true.
Um, Going back to that English teacher, is there one that you think of when you wrote that? Do you have an English teacher that sticks in your mind from that helps you
Uh,
write or get there?
yeah, I mean, my high school English teacher, Carol Jago, was probably one of the best teachers I ever had, and was a huge influence on me and a lot of my process and how I write now.
Shout out to all those great
I'm
English
sorry.
teachers out there.
Siri's
Huh?
Siri's talking to me now.
Oh,
Siri's talking to me now. Yeah.
she's saying, email your English teacher. No,
Mhm,
so I want to talk about the girl code too, because that really
mhm,
shaped Meg's future with Kristen. What was it
mhm.
about that? Have you experienced that in the past? Is that a phrase you've used? Why is that a big theme?
I think it's a theme that I want out there in the world, you know, women looking out for women. We're sort of set up against each other, especially out in the business world, where it's like if one woman succeeds, it means that I can't succeed. And I much prefer the idea of women lifting other women up. And so that's something that I try to instill in my students. It's something I try to instill in my kids. It's something I try to instill in my friends. We all have it. You know, how many of us have been at a bar and seen a girl in trouble and gone over and said, like, oh, come on over with us, right? Like that is the girl code. That's what we do. We look out for each other. We make sure girls aren't walking home alone to their car. You know, we look out. And that's the world I like to live in. So I generally create those worlds in my books.
Absolutely. I loved it. But I did hear you mention the word students, and I did not see that in your bio. So can you fill in that little
Mm.
before we keep going?
Yeah, I'm a teacher as well. I teach fifth grade. So that's my day job and I love it. And it's a great sort of separation from my writing. But it is why I get up at 3:30 in the morning to write so that I can go teach.
Ooh, 3:30. And you
Mhm.
talk about a con man needing patience. I would think a fifth grade teacher would need as much patience.
A lot. Yeah, a lot.
I will say my one of my all-time favorite teachers was my fifth grade teacher, Miss Mitchell. So you make
Mm.
an impact at every step. All right. So I want to go the flip side of this female power though. Although her mother did bring up the fact that yes, there's, two women working together, but on the flip side, she wasn't willing to settle. She wasn't willing to accept help. She was not okay with conveniences or comfort from other people. So do you think that negatively affect Meg in her thought process going forward? Because she seemed pretty resentful of that.
I mean, I think so. You know, here was a woman who had the ability to make her child's life easier. And, you know, I think as a single mom, it's really hard to know what the right path is, right? You know, you see people who get divorced and they go off and they start dating right away because they want to have they want to have a family for their kids to grow up in. And other people go the opposite way where they're like, no, I'm just going to focus on my kids and my relationships can come later. And there's no right or wrong way to do it. But knowing I also think like as a child, you know, Meg's always going to fault her mother because that's what we do. You know, we're never like, oh, you know, you did everything perfectly, mom. You know,
Yeah.
it doesn't happen. So, you know, it doesn't necessarily mean that she resents her mother, but I do think that she wouldn't have easier their life could have been if her mother had been more willing to accept that help.
Yeah. And I think this is a good segue into your theme of homelessness. So why was that one of your central themes? I mean, I think it was so impactful and it really made this book work, right? Because without it,
Mhm,
there's a linchpin missing. So what
mhm.
did you have? Like, had you researched this before? Was this something you're passionate about? Where did this come from?
Um, you know, I live in Los Angeles, so we have a lot of unhoused people here. And not all of them are, you know, drug addicts and mentally ill, and a lot of them are, but not all of them are. Some of them are people who are literally down on their luck, sleeping in their cars because they have nowhere else to go, especially after the pandemic. So for me, it was just I wanted to remind people that, you know, most people are just trying to get by as best they can. And sometimes circumstances happen that land you somewhere you never thought you would be, you know? And that's always my goal as a writer as well, is to just remind people like, look, you know, uh, things can go wrong at any moment, and try to have some grace for other people.
It broke my heart. I mean, teenagers can be so cruel and
Mhm.
how Meg, was treated. But then on the offset, you have Kristen who was just
Mhm.
being light of, camaraderie and helped her out in so many ways. And little did they know how that would affect the future going forward.
Yeah.
But I thought it was a great theme, and I'm glad that you do remind us of that because it was really impactful for me, and it really makes you look a different way. So I did appreciate that. Um, we did have, I do want to go back to your fifth grader comment because Kayla said
Mhm.
there probably are some fifth graders who are pretty good con artists too. So maybe they were a little bit of help.
Yeah, they're really not that good. They're pretty transparent and easy to see, but, you know, yeah,
But shout out to all you teachers out in the call
yeah.
today. So, um, all right. So I think another big important topic that I wanted to touch on was when she talks about your instinct. And we all feel it, we all know what's coming, but for some reason, girls are taught to ignore them.
Mhm.
So, can you just talk about that? Because I think it's important conversation that we
Mm.
need to have, and I would love to hear your thoughts.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like people in my generation, I'm in my 50s, were raised to make sure everybody in the room was comfortable. You know, nobody, my feelings were not making anybody else uncomfortable, I should say. You know, if I was having a bad day or if I was upset about something, like I was not to let that affect anybody else. So that was one thing that I've always been thinking about. Like, why are we taught as women that our feelings are hysterical, crazy, over the top, irrational? You know, they're feelings and we
Right.
have them. And then the second thing is just a female intuition, which I think is pretty strong in most women. We get a sense of people, we get a gut check, and oftentimes we're pressed for a reason why we're saying no. Why? Why are you saying no? Why are you not agreeing to do this thing? And sometimes we scramble back because we don't necessarily have a concrete reason. We have a feeling. We have our gut is telling us, I don't want to do that. And so the idea that we don't trust our intuition, or we've been taught that if we don't have a reason, then we don't have a right to say no is just incorrect, you know? Like, our reason is my feeling. That's my feeling and that's my reason. I don't want to. And I don't have to give you a reason, you know? So I think there's just a lot of that sort of residual like learning that, you know, people in my generation are doing. Like, when I say no to something, I can say no and put a period at the end of that sentence. I don't need to give them 100 reasons why and how I'm really sorry and maybe next time and under these other circumstances maybe the answer would have been yes. Like, I don't have to do that, you know. And we were just raised at a time when all of that was necessary in order for a no to be accepted.
I just was having this conversation with my mom of, she felt bad about saying no to something. And I said, Mom, you have to say no to be able to say yes to something else. So
Right.
And it's so hard, I think, for a lot of us, and it's starting
Mhm.
to be better, right? I think we're teaching our
Yes.
children that that's okay. So I appreciated it. And I loved that Meg used it to her advantage
Mhm.
when the car accident happened. And she
Mhm.
was going off. She's like, "Don't even say,
Mhm.
I'm an irrational woman." Like she
Right.
knows that her instincts are so on the money that she's able to manipulate them and change them for her situation.
Mhm. Yeah.
Um, do you okay, and this is all obviously spoiler. When do you think in the book, well, I'm gonna start over because I'm gonna ask one question first. Do you think Meg was training Kat to do this? Was that ever her intent to take the next steps of being a con artist? Was this in training, in other words?
I don't think it was her original intent. Yeah, I don't think it was her original intent. But I do think that at some point, and I'm not even sure when, Meg saw that Kat would be good at this.
Well, that was my next question, was when ish you thought the turnaround could have happened. Was there a moment when you thought, oh yeah, Meg sees it now?
I'm not sure, but there is. I'm not sure when that is.
My thought,
Um,
go ahead.
no, go ahead because you probably read it more recently than me.
Well, I was just thinking, when she thought how good of a liar
Yeah.
Kat was, and she made that comment in her head that said, "Oh,
Mhm.
she's as good as me.
Mhm.
She just doesn't know I know." To me, I think that
Mhm.
was what the spark was, and as soon as she saw how good she was at it, then she started thinking it through a little bit more. That was my thought.
Maybe. Yeah. Yeah, that makes sense.
Um, where else do you think? I guess, did you think that Meg saw Kat as a total equal, like that she was on her same level?
I don't think at first, no. But I think that Meg started to truly grow to care for Kat a lot and saw a lot of value in Kat's skill set. And so I would say by the end, she definitely did. I think she probably saw Kat in a greater light than Kat saw herself.
Okay. She made the comment, they say you can never go home, but you can. Do you think Meg has the ability to come home at some point? I mean, she's living her life in Costa Rica, right? Why do you want to come home? But I mean, she does love these people. She loves Kat. Is it Cole? The Y? Is that his name? Cole? I can't remember.
Cal, Cal,
Cal, thank you.
Cal,
Um, is
CAL.
I mean, she really loves
Yeah.
him as well. Like, do you think she has the ability to come back?
I don't know if she would come back.
Okay.
I don't know. Maybe if she was needed, I think she would. But I don't think she would otherwise.
Why is that?
I think that she wants to start a life where she can be somebody who true to herself, right? She doesn't want to do any more cons. She has plenty of money. She doesn't need that. She wants to build a community. She wants to have friends. And she can't really do that in a place where, she did these other things,
Right.
So she really does want a clean break.
Well, she knows she has to make sacrifices, and relationships is one. I just wondered if, yeah, I mean, that makes sense. And then, one other really heavy topic that, it's always hard to discuss is rape. Um,
Hmm.
and
Hmm.
it's always a heavy blow. It's hard to read. It's it wasn't graphic, obviously, because of how you set it up. But why did you choose to use rape, Kate Kat's rape in this novel?
I needed Kat to have a reason to want to go after Meg. It couldn't have just been for the story and for the fame or money. It needed to be personal. And so I needed a way to have Kat, even misguidedly. I mean, even Kat is the first to admit, like, I know that, like, she's not the one who raped me,
Right.
but she's the one that set me on the path. And it brings to mind a lot of the things that we see in the real world, where it's easy to blame the women, it's harder to blame the men. It's easy to blame Meg than it is to hold Nate accountable. The fact that exposing Meg will also be a big boon for Kat in a way that exposing Nate wouldn't, um, is sort of icing on the cake. It's Kat kind of looking out for herself and trying to further her own career, and to maybe take her trauma and turn it into something that she can actually, benefit from. But Kat's obsession with Meg needed to be personal, and that was the way that I found that I could make it personal.
So when you said at the beginning of the call that you knew where this novel was going, did you always know that Kat was going to be going after him from the beginning? Like you knew that was where it was going to end?
Uh-huh. Yeah, I did.
You're too
Yeah.
good. You're too good. How do you do that? Do you plot it out? Like do you just know in your head, you've already pictured it?
I just know what the last scene looks like and I figure out how to get there. Like I can see it like a movie in my mind, generally
You're very
speaking. And it
visual.
was that way. Yeah, it was that way it's been that way with all of my books. I see that last chapter about halfway through drafting, and that's as soon as I see that, I know where I'm going.
That's too cool. That's too cool. All right.
Yeah.
This is the time when you can ask questions. So be thinking about that. In the meantime, I'm going to do some rapid fire questions. So don't think a lot. Just go for
Okay.
it. Okay?
Okay.
Hiking or surfing?
Hiking.
Online or paper banking?
Oh, I used to be paper now online.
Okay. These aren't so rapid fire when your internet stalls out.
I
It's
know.
hilarious.
I don't know what's happening. I'm so sorry. I
No,
have a full
it's fine.
signal.
It's
I
just,
don't get it.
you said famous last words. I said this was going to be rapid fire. And of course, but it just cracks me up.
Yeah.
I think we've already covered this, but when you're writing, do you paper or computer?
Paper.
Yoga or Pilates?
Pilates.
Coffee or wine?
Both.
Journalism or fiction writing?
Fiction writing.
I think someone asked this on the chat. Meg or Kat?
Meg. Meg. All day long, Meg. She's my favorite.
Justice, revenge, or karma?
Karma.
All right. Thanks so much.
Mhm.
All right, people. Now it's your turn to ask some questions. So if you want to go ahead and raise your hand if you have something. I know there's a couple in the chat box that I haven't gotten to that I'll get to. Or if you want to ask it live, you certainly can. Does anybody have a question? Oh, okay. I'll go ahead and ask this one first. Well, yes, a sequel. Kat has some real potential here to be.
She does. Yeah, I don't know. I'm not a sequel person. I generally like to leave books where they are. But I really did set it up well, didn't I? So we'll see. Now the answer is no, but no forever.
Okay, you're gonna have to repeat that part again because you went out.
I right now I don't see that happening, but it could at some point.
Yeah, it's just set up too good. It's so good. Okay. Yeah, a series. Come on, Kat needs help. Okay. Speaking of dysfunctional mothers, Kat's mom is so manipulative. Can you talk about her mom? Because she is totally opposite of Meg's.
Yeah, she's terrible. It's sort of I wanted to also explore like the generation of women who had to come up in a world where they had to tolerate all of this treatment, right? They had to work hard. They had to manage in a world where men could say things and do things to them and there were little to no consequences and they just had to suck it up. And so that's sort of like the world where her mother is coming from.
And let's talk about that world of journalism writing, because that's specifically where she lives, is in this newspaper journalism world. And she talks about how hard it is as a woman versus a man in that industry. Is it the same for like in fiction writing? Do you see that on your side of the word?
Yeah, I do see there's a huge discrepancy in what like the advances that men get versus the advances women get. I think that there are in some of the premier publications there are opportunities for men. I see that equalizing. I write commercial fiction, so for me, the thriller world is heavy with women who are doing extremely well. So I don't really experience that. I would say that's more in the literary genre. I think that, you know, our marginalized writers need to have their voices uplifted a little bit more so than women. But I do think that um awards and things like that often go to men.
I want to follow up on a question about the journalism part. Have you ever worked in that field, or did you talk to someone maybe? Um,
Yeah, I did. I worked with a journalist to kind of run lingo and process and where would I get this kind of thing. But it was but and so that's how I was able to write Cat as a journalist.
it felt so authentic. I had no idea you were a teacher, first of all. I thought maybe you had started as a journalist. So,
Mm-mm.
and back to Allison has a question here. Now that I know that you're a teacher, are you teaching your students to fictionate?
Um, you know, I'm kind of stuck to the standards. There is a short little narrative unit in fifth grade that I kind of pull a lot of my own writing tricks in. But mostly they don't really care that I'm a writer. They're like, yeah, whatever. She talks a lot. That's what they think.
So
So
that was Alicia's question. They know that you're an author, but they really could care less.
they really don't care. Yeah.
Are your kids the same way?
Oh, for sure. For sure. I said to my oldest, who's 17, my audiobook for Lies I Tell got nominated for an International Thriller Award. And so I said, hey, you know, my audiobook got nominated for the, you know, an International Thriller Award. And he said, so the version you had the least to do with? And I was like, yeah, yeah, that one.
Yeah, thanks. No, that is so. By the way, congratulations on that. We will
Thank
say
you.
awesome job, and you're going to get your
Thank you.
kudos from this group. But I know that it's yeah,
No,
it's
I love it.
well
I mean,
served.
yes, they're teenagers and they're like,
Yeah,
whatever, lady, you know,
a
what's for dinner?
17-year-old would have said the exact same thing. Don't.
Hmm.
It's not just you. It's teenagers.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, Talking about courses, though, Renee wants to know. She said, "I'm taking a creative writing course. Any pointers? Like, do you like what advice do you give to
Um,
people?"
find your people in that class who will become your beta readers. You know, find the people whose style connects with yours. Find the people whose genre connects with yours, and make friends with them and make them your community. That's the best thing that you can get out of a creative writing class. Really, is the people.
Awesome. All right, it looks like Kayla has a question. Kayla, will you go ahead and unmute? There you
Am I
go.
unmuted?
Yes, go for it.
I was just wondering if you're working on any projects or books at the moment.
I am. It's a little early to tell, but unfortunately, it is a dual timeline. 3 POV right now, so we'll see. We'll see where that goes. Yeah, it
Okay.
bumps back and forth between present time and 1975.
All right.
Great,
Thank you.
great question.
Mhm.
And I will follow up on that. So, do you have a deadline? I hope it's not 9 months.
I do not have a deadline. We haven't even sold it yet, which
Okay.
after the last 9 month deadline, I was like, can I finish the book and then we'll talk about it? Because I just needed to be able to let this one marinate. And this one definitely needs it. So I'm having a lot of fun with it, getting closer, getting closer, getting closer. I'm hoping to sell it by the summer and have it out next year, would be my hope. We'll see.
You know, I know some authors, like we spoke with Diane Chamberlain, and she is on a definite
Mhm.
schedule, and that's how she writes. And then I heard Jason Mott speak, and he said he will not take a contract because his creative writing just crashes with that deadline. So it sounds like you are preferring, for at least this book, that same sort of freedom without, a calendar in front of you.
Yeah, I mean, I think that there's a lot of drawbacks to teaching and writing at the same time. Mostly momentum and time make it challenging to gain momentum and then have to step away. But I will say that the financial aspect makes it so that I have the luxury to say, I need more time on this book and I don't need to worry about selling a book a year, publishing a book a year, which I do think over the course of several years would really make it very, very challenging to produce high quality fiction that, I'm proud of, that I feel like will sell well. Um, it takes time. It just takes time. So I would prefer to do a book every 2 years. Some authors are just prolific and can do a book a year. But I don't necessarily think that's the best route for me, because sometimes books need just that time to sort of marinate in your head, and solutions appear near the very, very end. So you don't want to miss that.
Well, I interview Alice Elliott Dark next Sunday right here. This for Fellowship Point.
Mhm.
I believe that was 20 years since her last publication. So
Yeah, I'm probably not going to wait that long.
just checking.
No.
Lauren would like to know, her friend Nikki is writing a book and she wants to know, do you have tips to help improve sales, like any sort of self-promoting? Like what do you do, or what can you suggest to writers out there?
It's so hard. I would say invest in a BookBub promotion if you can, because that is thousands and thousands of people. But that whole thing, that whole area is like a science unto itself. So I would look into BookBub. That would be my one piece of advice. But it's promoting a book yourself is just, it's grueling and it's expensive and it's hard. It's really hard to reach readers.
Uh, well, we appreciate all the time that you're giving to this club. So thank you for joining us. Allison
Sure.
would like to know what you are currently reading right now.
So let me pull up my stack here. I have several books that I have loved in the last week or so. Oh, wait, there's one more. Hold on.
Keep them coming. Keep them coming.
All right, so I just finished this one, the Rebecca Makkai. I have some questions for you. I loved it. Oh my God, I was obsessed with it. I could not put it down. It was one of those books where all I wanted to do was get back to it. And I've been in a huge reading slump for a long time. And this book totally pulled me out of it. So this one, highly recommend that one. The Sweet Spot by Amy Pople. I loved this book. Everything about it, the world, the New York, the brownstone, the family, there's one woman in this book, Melinda, who is so phenomenally funny. And you're just going to love her. She's bitter and she's angry and she has every right to be. And she's so much fun to read. I loved her. This one I've been recommending to everyone. I love it. Lauren Belfer, Ashton Hall. It's an amazing book. It's so atmospheric. A mother and her son go to England to live in this like castle and her son, who's on the spectrum, discovers a 500-year-old skeleton buried inside, which is like, it was really, I loved it. This one is coming out this week, I think, or if it's already, or maybe it just came out, I can't remember. This one was so much fun. I loved it. It's two women, an old woman and a young woman and her caretaker, who are basically on the run from the law. And it's a fantastic story. I just really loved it. And then I just started this one today, and so far, so good. I am really enjoying it. It is The Age of Vice, and I don't know much about it yet. I'm on page 68, and so stay tuned. But it's a long book. It's like 546 pages, so I'll probably be with it for a while.
And I believe that's going to be made into a series. Like the options have already been picked up on that one as well, right?
Yeah.
So it's supposed to be pretty atmospheric as well. So that's exciting.
Mm-hmm.
And this might be a little bit repetitive, but I loved your end game as a novelist. This quote: "You can prepare yourself for something, imagine it 100 different ways, and still find yourself breathless when it actually happens." I definitely had that one for me when I was reading this novel. Have you experienced that, like in a book, a movie, a show, something? Like when have you ever had that moment of just
of like of being surprised that something's happening?
like a twist of some sort, or however you want to be breathless?
Yeah, I mean, I think so. I think we all have, where we're just like, I can't believe that actually happened, or oh my gosh, I love it when it's in a book and the author takes it in a direction that you didn't know you wanted it to go in, but you're like, oh my God, we're on the ride now. Like, oh yes, I didn't know I wanted it to go in this direction, but now that it has, I am so here for this.
Yeah.
That I think is really fun. I love that part of reading. It's one of my favorite things.
Well, I agree. I'm glad when Kat and Meg, even though they didn't know it, were on the same team working towards that goal. And I really appreciate you sharing all this with us. I think it's been excellent. I know we've had so much great conversation in the chat, just reading everyone's reviews. It's been so just exciting, and congrats on the book of the month choice. Was that a surprise for
Thank
you?
you.
How did that go down?
Yeah, I mean, the last flight was a book of the month, and I really wanted this one to be as well. And I was a little worried that it wouldn't be. And I went back, I was so neurotic about it that I went back to my emails, because the last flight released in June of 2020 and the Lies I Tell released in June of 2022. So I figured like the notification would come about the same time. So I went back into my email to see like, well, when did my editor tell me that we got book of the month, right? So that I can have like date in my head and I'm not just like wondering. And so it was April 1st that she sent me the notification. And so I was like, okay, so around the beginning of April, right? And it made sense. And so April 1st came and went. I didn't remember, and I was like, I guess it didn't get picked. Okay. And I was like making my peace with it. Like everybody should have a turn. Like it's not going to be my turn every time, like really trying to be okay with it. And my editor emailed me April 2nd and was like, I was out of the office yesterday. I didn't see this email until today, but your book of the month. And I was like, oh, thank God. So
it wasn't quite an April Fool's joke, but you kind of sound like a senior waiting for college acceptance around that same time of year, checking the emails.
It actually feels a lot like that. It feels a lot like that. Like, you're sitting there and the email's going to come and you don't know what it's going to say. And it's going to be this, it's going to be a yes, or it's going to be a no. There's no like maybe. And you're trying to like not visualize too much the yes, because you don't want to jinx it, while still trying to like, I'm going to start accepting my losses now and make my peace with it and understand that, everything happens for a reason. You get very magnanimous and very philosophical. And then when you get it, you're like, oh, thank God. Right.
Well, congrats on it. We're so excited for you. We're glad that you have had all these accolades, and we will be along the journey to see what's coming up next. Take your time and we'll be ready when you're ready. So thank you, Julie, all you readers out there for joining. Please make sure you check out her website, follow her on Instagram. You heard her promise some photos of her process. I'd love for everyone to follow the LBs, the Lover of Books, on Instagram and Facebook. And also check out my YouTube channel, because that's where all these recordings are going to be uploaded. On Sunday, April 2nd at 8 p.m. We're shifting gears a little bit. We're going a little bit more into a literary fiction book. I'm hosting Alice Elliott Dark to discuss Fellowship Point. And I'm just going to use the quote from the LA Times to give you a sneak peek. Longing for an old-fashioned 19th century novel, but without the time travel, Fellowship Point earns its nearly 600 pages with the quietly complex structure, starring two octogenarian women whose long friendship is entangled with their family's landholdings in coastal Maine. As they seek to save acreage from development, Agnes Lee and Polly Wister must also confront their past choices and find some peace in the present. So I know, I'm not sure how fast you read. If you haven't started it yet, you better get going. Hopefully you already have. It's also a fantastic audiobook. Hopefully I'll see you next Sunday on that one. Thank you, Mike, for running the behind the scenes. If you know of an author that you would like to chat with, please let me know. And I will see you next Sunday. Julie, thank you so much. You were such a delight, and you just gave us so much insight.
Thank you.
And
thanks for having me. It was fun.
Hopefully we'll get to see you for your next one. Good night, everybody.
All right. Have a great night. Bye.
You too.